Okay, just a minute. Anybody else join? Some people may be waiting. Let me see.
Just a minute, just a minute. Where is the host? Okay.
No, I made you host.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can close now, right?
Yeah, you can drop off here. Right. Welcome all. This is Balaji. I'm the organizer for this Quantum Cure Part 2 session. This is for related to biosensor and quantum sensors. And this one, the Zen for Quantum Meter was started 2 years back. I have to share my screen just a minute.
I can put your screen on, Balaji, if you want to just keep speaking. Give me the control. Give me the control, I can share it.
Just a minute. All right. So,
Let's put it on. Go ahead, Balaji. You're on.
okay. So
Your
Zen for Quantum was started 2 years back. It was Zen was a kind of spiritual way we started initially, and it went to technology, Zen AI, and now it became quantum. And 6 months back, we announced one quantum meetup. And Suraj was one of the first speaker in this session 6 months back. He started, he was the pioneer in that sense. So he was our patron. He has done a lot of other sessions like sensors in sequence. And also we have Vinay also. I was one of his student in Udemy course. I called him, then he joined our team. And Virendra also one of the participants that time first session, and he become advisor for these sessions. And he's also moderating sessions also. He was very helpful and other things to continue with these slides. Next slide, please. So this quantum sensors, the idea came because if you look at the COVID virus, it looks like almost like it has a tactile, so it looks like a sensors. So to counteract, we should create some quantum sensors to identify cheaper way. So I was part of a society called Bio-Curious Society, where they create biosensors in a small sheet of papers. They print on a heated metal, and they print this using a 3D printer. So it is possible in that way, in a quantum level, we can do much cheaper in atomic level. There is a possibility of creating quantum sensors in that way. So it may be looking like this. In the left side, we see a fusion reactor, which combines the elements to create energy. That is the highest energy which can be harvested close to nuclear energy. So same way, the virus also creates a protein in a fusion way. It takes the enzymes of our own body protein and replicates. It is like a fusion engine in a small scale. So this left side is the real fusion engine the researchers created. It looks almost like the virus, we can say, comparatively. So the quantum level is a bio fusion engine, the virus itself. Next slide, please.
Your slide is not showing on the webinar.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not showing?
No.
It's there. I can see it. I can see on the others.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Yeah, I can.
So it could be a local problem with one person. Can you please fix it?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Totally understand. But and we have a recording. You can catch up that also if you miss anything. But just wanted Balaji, if you want to carry on. If it's a local miss, if everybody not seeing, then we have to see. But if everybody's else seeing it, thank you.
Have you seen any sensors in real life? I mean, quantum sensors. Actually, MRI machines which hospital uses nothing but a quantum machine. So it uses our water molecule hydrogen as the quantum level state, and it determines the position of the cells based on the electromagnetic waves they send, and the energy depletion creates a picture. So in that, they use machine learning to convert that signal to create graph from that. So it is basically a combination of quantum and AI machine. And it is very expensive though. So now the University of Bristol has created a much cheaper one, which can be used similar to the MRI used in the hospital. So MRI is used for scanning our real-time brain structures, those things, basically, you must be knowing. So that way we can use this new sensors, biosensors, which they have created to surveillance the bacteria's virus, and prevention aspects we can do in this outbreaks. If any mutation occurs, we can detect quickly. So the biosensor, in that way, quantum biosensors are more important in future to identify the mutated virus. Next slides, please. So another research institute has come with quantum dots. They call, they use the DNA sequence. They convert the DNAs into a atomic level using a metal atoms as a equivalent to DNA sequence. And they made as a fluorescence, it glows. Whenever it passes through a particular virus, it glows certain sequence, identifying this virus belongs to this classification. So it is easy to classify using these biosensors, biomarkers they call. So this is also another way of identifying COVID-like viruses in a quantum level. They call quantum dots, basically. So that is, they convert, even Samsung use quantum dots in TV. It is almost similar to that. We can say that in that TV, they use photon to hit the different photosensitive layers. They are almost using this here also, quantum biosensors. Next slide, please. So I came up on a hypothesis about how this virus is spreading to our lungs. So if you take the history of the COVID, it lived millions of years in this bat host, basically. And the host is not affected by that because its immunity is adapted to this. And they have a very fast reacting interferon protein, which alerts the system. So they are a defense system good. At the same time, they host this virus as incubators, basically. how they balance, they found they balance by when they are flying, their body temperatures increase very extremely, it seems, so that they kill some of them and keep some of them alive. So there is a symbiosis in their relationship. Why means the bats, when they eat, the predators get infected. So they don't prefer this bat. So it is a defensive mechanism. It is using that. And so this virus involved in this, if you look at the bat, it looks almost like a lung hanging upside. I mean, the lung looked like a bat hanging upside down. So why this virus always attacks lungs? Because it is looking for a signal pattern of the bat, its host, which it evolved thousands of years. So it finds in the human, the only related organ is the lung. It looks almost like a bat hanging upside down with the head inside. The heart looks like a head. That is my kind of hypothesis that came out, but it may be true. We have to see whether it is possible. And this is one of the area, the bat's immunity has to be analyzed and find the right immune protein structure that may help in solving this also. Bat has given us radar system. Basically, they are very intelligent. In the, it gives sonar system which helps in detecting with using sound waves. So it is always, always having so many interesting features in its body, and its flight pattern, still people are trying to find how it is able to fly with very narrow spaces. They're trying to replicate it for flight also. So there is a lot of things we can learn from bat. It is almost dangerous, but also it has its own positive thing. That's my end of speech, but this is my starting, and I will hand over to Virendra to continue with the other sessions.
Thank you, Balaji. I think that was a very fantastic introduction to the biosensors, quantum sensors, and the most startling is this bats immunity to COVID-19 piece, which you presented about bats. So with that, let's now dive into our Act 2. So we did last week Act 1. This is Act 2. And from that angle, we'll be going forward today with this quantum sensors, hybrid systems, AI, ML, supercomputing, and how we are going to make use of all these activities. Whatever is going on in the field, there is a lot happening. There's a lot to catch up from 2 weeks ago. So we have, first of all, for the main subject of the topic, we have Suraj, who will be basically talking on the technology for the quantum sensors and the biosensors, as Balaji explained. We have Bhairav, who's coming in with the data science, a lot of trajectory about the COVID and all these things. And then we have Vinay, our Udemy trainer, a young, energetic gentleman who will be giving us more about the quantum sensors. So this is our quick introduction of our speakers today. And with that, I'm getting to quickly the Act 1, which we had 2 weeks ago. Things are still moving. We had that on 82nd day, and still Corona etiquette remains the same. Everything remains the same. We are still following all those things. We get into today, COVID-19, 96th day, Act 2, where we are trying to talk through quantum sensing. And as they say, quantum computing is something like a box of chocolate. You never know when you're going to get what you're going to get, when you're going to measure. It's the same problem with the quantum cops here, if we see here. They are also not sure if they were able to measure their speed. But as with the corporate and home life, which is consistently impacted, I was looking for a barber who could give me a haircut, maintaining social distancing. A haircut from 6 feet away. I'm still waiting for that. I know, I'm sure a lot of us are stranded at home. As we get into this segment for us, for the 3 segments which we have just discussed, and we'll be getting into that, and format is the same. We'll get to the each panelist, give them their chance to completely cover their subject, and then we'll see if we have any questions. Go through the Zoom signal chat, put a question in chat, we'll get to it if it is important right away, or we'll get to at the end of the segment. So please make sure to save your questions definitely on the chat. Do not miss that because they are important and we have all these expertise. It's a very moving target, our quantum computing for the COVID and the COVID-19 itself a moving target. Something reminds me of tango. You know, what is the basic routine in a tango? Follow the music. That's what we are going to do today. So sit down, tighten your belts, and we get onto this quantum sensing journey with our technologist from Amazon, Flexa Shopping. Basically Amazon Alexa shopping group, a very, very learned expert on the topic for quantum sensing. Suraj, you're next. You're on.
Thanks, Virendra. So basically, I would say the corona that we knew until a few weeks ago, the box of chocolates and learning, that will keep us young and energetic. If everybody will agree with me. So, well, unfortunately, we have the other corona as well. So anyway, as everybody knows, there's currently no cure, or people are testing cures for corona. I would want to focus more on the technological aspects and some of the experimentation that's been going on with the fusion of quantum technologies and medicine as well. Yeah, so I am currently with Amazon, but I do not do quantum computing at Amazon. So the views expressed are solely mine, and it should not be tied back to Amazon or any other organizations that I have been a part of. Well, through my disclaimer, so what are quantum sensors? What are sensors basically? Sensors are some devices that have the capability to measure something. That's at the basic level, right? So, I mean, I do not want to go much into the evolution of sensors. Nowadays, sensors are everywhere. You have sensors for electricity, for example, and sensors for basically doing measurement as you come into the advancement of Internet of Things technology, where sensors and devices are used pretty much. So what does quantum provide that the sensors that we have currently do not, right? It comes mostly to the precision levels. And as we go through these slides, I will elaborate more on what has been achieved so far, right? So for any device, right? So a device is nothing but that responds to certain stimulus. And quantum sensors, basically, they have high energy levels, and they provide you with a means of coherent means to measure the physical quantity, right? And those who are aware of quantum entanglement, it uses the quantum entanglement properties to improve measurements beyond the limits of classical centers, right? So let me touch upon entanglement a little bit, but not going too much into the details. Entangled state in quantum computing means that two or more quanta are bound together in a similar state. And more, why it gets a little spooky is once the two quanta are entangled, any change that we make in one quanta will be reflected exactly in the other quanta, regardless of the distance, right? This was a theory that was floated around, and it even spooked the likes of Einstein. That's what they say in quantum mechanics, in quantum physics world. So theoretically, if you entangle two quanta and physically split them apart to opposite sides of the Earth, one in the North Pole and one in the South Pole, and you induce a physical state in one of the quanta, if you measure the other, you will get exactly the same parameters that was induced on the first. So this takes a very significant value in terms of quantum communication as well, where already people are trying to develop the quantum communication channels where you have the traditional repeaters that is used to enhance your current signals. People are already trying to come up with quantum repeaters for quantum communication. That's one of the example. So having said that, why it provides means of easy measurement or guaranteed measurement is, imagine a phase where you have two entangled quanta, and one you have deployed in on the skin, for example. You're measuring some parameter out there. You need not be physically present next to the measurement area. You can be present anywhere and you can still see what is going on to the patient, for example. This could have considerable impacts in telemedicine applications as well. That's one of the fields that is emerging as we speak. And so criteria for any quantum sensors or any sensor generally is, it has to be initialized in a way and it can be read out, right? And it can be manipulated coherently. I touched upon this when I explained entanglement, where you are manipulating the phase or the state of one of the quanta, and then you can measure it at the other end. And the basic criteria for a quantum sensor is that it interacts with a physical quantity and has some response to the quantity. Virendra, can we go to the next slide? So a lot has been done basically around sensors for other applications, especially around geosensing or gravity sensing as well. There's a lot of work that has been done in Europe, where they were detecting underground structures, and also for volcano monitoring at Mount Vesuvius. And the other application you have that people are speaking around is around the 3D LiDAR technology, which enables people to look around the corners, if you will, where the scientists, we can measure the arrival time of photons with very high accuracy, and that has given them the capability to look beyond that straight line that the regular LiDARs provide. Virendra, next slide. So as I spoke, there are quite a few applications that people are trying around in healthcare. Balaji touched upon the MRI sensors. What basically they're trying to do around MRI sensing is use a beam splitter to split the entangled photons and send one photon light to the measurement subject and basically read out the other. So they're trying all these spooky things where the actual device that is measuring need not be close to the subject at all. That could prove a tremendous value in how we perform such basic measurements. How it relates to critical applications like COVID-19, right? Imagine you develop an entangled state and you are able to project one particular state on a subject. So what we're saying is the doctor or the physician who is testing the patient need not be present at the scene, right? If I'm sitting at my home and my doctor is 6 feet away, right? That's the recommended standard, right? 6 feet. Yeah, it can go beyond the recommended standard, right?
Yeah.
Of that 6 feet. And still the doctors will be able to measure what's going on with my body, right? And also the other applications of sensors, quantum sensors, because of precision, is applications on stealth detection. Gravimeters that we spoke about in the earlier slide, they have applications where you can detect underground movement, especially around the submarines, which cause very minor changes in the gravitational forces. Because of the precision levels that the quantum sensors give out, this is a critical advantage out here. Next slide. Virendra. So there are many applications, some of which I think I have already touched upon. There is the US Army scientists, they are experimenting with Rydberg atoms for precision data receivers. So the Rydberg atoms have a property that they don't absorb the energy from the field that they measure. So since they don't absorb energy, there's no energy loss. The transmission can be carried out at greater lengths. That's one of the major advantages out there. How these magnetic field sensors are being built today is mainly they are taking advantage of certain small defects in diamond crystals and other chemicals. So diamond defect sensors, they have been found to offer high sensitivity to magnetic fields because of the quantum spin, right? And some of these technologies are also being extended to producing a quantum chip, computational chip. Intel is going after this particular technology. And yeah, medical imaging, I spoke about the beam splitters and how we can elaborate a state that is being captured by one particular quanta and measure it at a greater distance. That's one of the advantages. Virendra, next slide. So these are some of the references that I have used. So yeah, I know the talk focuses mostly today on quantum sensing applications. But in general, I just want to sign off by saying quantum sensing is just a very small subset of the area in quantum computational space. The actual computational advantages that the quantum technology offers, I think will have much greater advantages because of the nature and the promise of speed that quantum technology offers us today. So there have been a bunch of industries, including aerospace, notably Boeing and Airbus, and also in the field of quantum chemistry, where people are, as we speak, trying to develop quantum simulation applications around the chemical areas, if you will. So the goal will be to speed up the process of chemical and / drug development, right? That's, I think, one of the more fascinating applications that would come out. So ideal world would be you have precision quantum sensors that will tell you exactly, say, who is affected or when a person is affected in a pandemic situation like us. And then you take that particular knowledge and use a quantum computer to develop faster simulations and speed up the development process for a cure, right? That would be the ideal state that we all would look forward to. With that, I will sign off and hand it over to Virendra.
Before we let you go, I have a couple of questions, and it's all within your talk, which you have been talking, and Balaji has been talking, a couple of hypotheses as well, Suraj. So I think that's the most beautiful example in these days I've heard what you just explained, right? Taking through entanglement, how to use entanglement for measurement, and then using that to identify the patients without getting into the proximity of the doctor. It could be anywhere as long as we can achieve this, as you just very nicely explained. And as I say in the last talk also, I had a very favorite example of the moment I put on one socks, the second socks becomes the left or right foot sock, right? Now, someone may challenge me that, hey, there are some socks available in the market which has L or R indicated on them, but I can challenge them, guys, doesn't matter if you put L in R and R in L, still the other one will become the other one.
Yes.
With that said, where are we in that technology? How far are we from that thing? Is there someone really working? If you have some idea of that piece of, I would say, technology being worked for doctors and this kind of patient situation?
So obviously, there's quite a bit happening around the chemical industrial side of things, right? Namely, people are toying with the idea of simulations, especially for drug development. I mean, now as everybody is aware, the drug development process from ideation to marketing, it's a very lengthy process, the majority of which is spent around the actual development and also the certification, right? The reason being it's a computationally heavy process, as we understand, and even though they use clusters of whatever supercomputing capabilities that are available today, it's only a few that can do it today. The likes of Merck and others, they spend billions and billions of dollars for developing new molecules, mainly because they invest a lot of time around simulation and actual experimentation. So in an ideal state where, I mean, as we speak, we at least I do not know of a quantum computer that is field ready for this particular application, but everybody is going after achieving that nirvana, right? In that ideal state, the computational gains around chemical simulations is projected to be 20x. What that means is the simulations can be done in 1/20th of time. How does that translate to? It translates to faster experimentation, fail fast cycles, and improved development. And also potentially it can bring the costs down when you can have such flexibility in simulation, and also more accurate or more precise drugs. I'm not a chemical expert, but this is the way the world is moving towards the application of the quantum technology. But having said that, there's not been an announcement made of any existing quantum computer that can take us there yet. We are speaking about a 5-year or a 10-year time period where this could happen.
Perfect. No, I think that's great. And you just set up exactly for my next question was, which you said about computational gains of 20x. And also when it comes to, I'm reading and we all are reading, we all came together on this group and we started working on the quantum area, started learning, and we all are reading that still, whatever we may say, but quantum is very localized for certain very specialized application, not for general computing. What are your thoughts to that? And with that, I will let you go definitely this time.
No, you can throw more questions. You bring up a very very good thought out there. If the audience can take a step back and think about the 1950s, early 50s and early 60s, when computational engines or computers were being developed, the applications were very specific. The machines were large, right?
Yeah.
You could do only so much. The reasons were the technology available for computation was very limited. And as and when we developed more specific applications, we realized that these machines can be used for general purpose computing as well. And that opened the floodgates into the technology advancements that we see today, right? And even then, you have a trend reversal in the sense that today we have a broad category of general purpose computers and also ASICs, which are application specific, right?
Yeah.
So there comes the divergence. I think when we speak about the quantum computational field right now, where we are in, from a timeline perspective for comparison, we are in that mid 50s, early 60s stage where the machines are being developed for specific applications and computational heavy tasks. And there will be a broader evolution into potential general purpose application quantum computing, but I don't know if it will be practically feasible to have a quantum chip built on an iPhone kind of a device. And I don't think that we will see that in our lifetimes. Maybe our kids will take advantage of that fact.
Hopefully, absolutely. But I am eager if we can see something as well. With that said, thank you so much, Suraj.
No problem.
That's been very insightful talk. And with that, we'll move forward. And let me see if I can see here what next we have in the subject. I'm sure we have here. So this is where, like when we started with Act 1, March 24, I took the slide coming from 396K cases to today. This is just before our session. Look at the numbers, staggering numbers. So the biggest challenge in front of mankind right now is how to flatten and control this pandemic, control this curve. You can see this curve. It's like it's picking up. It's picking up where it's posing us the challenges. All the companies starting from D-Wave, Atos, Microsoft, Gilead, any company you can think of which is related in the areas Suraj just mentioned, computational side or the drug side or the pharmaceutical side, they have been jumped into the fray. Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, all corporates are coming together to help. And they are saying that, yes, whatever we can do, whatever way we can move forward to help it, to reduce this requirement, to get this into the study plan or even get some drug application faster so that they can reduce this time frame to get to a powerful thing. And I will not take any time here. This is one piece which you can take at leisure later. But with the changing time, the way all these corporates are jumping, the way everybody's transforming on the fly, look at the cardiac surgeons on the front line, changing that into COVID units. In New York has been the badly hit state. And then when it comes to overall healthcare providers, they are trying to make nasal swabs just to take the testing. Another example, Brook Brothers, they are making 150 surgical masks per day, wherefrom they were doing some garment thing or whatever way. People have been changing. Fernando Simon, the director of Spain National Health Emergency Center, Spain and that area in Europe, again, very badly impacted. He said, we have to reduce to the maximum this mortality. And that's where I'm taking us next, that how machine learning, deep learning, and all these advanced AI techniques are being employed to get to the antiviral drug for treating COVID-19. These scientists are trying to use this drug target interaction. Research scientists are trying to use a fully developed neural network to identify and rank this protein thing. And things have gone much forward there. This approach is enabling them to really go much faster. And that's where I have the stage set for my next panel expert, Bhairav, who's going to take us through this journey, AI/ML, all these problems. He's going to take us through a complete trajectory of hotspots, scores, what is the forecast, where is this current status right now, and he's going to take us through even drug trials and a lot more. So tighten your seatbelts. Over to you, Bhairav. We are not able to hear you. I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
Turn
okay. All right. Thank you for the great introduction. I'm looking forward to it too. I think the slide showing up is Vinay's slide. Yeah. Maybe he's going to join us after me. All right. So where we are at right now. So let me just make it big here. Okay. So it's an untamed invisible enemy in the wild. It's going, especially in the US, it is going crazy. The numbers in the Bay Area itself are growing. In fact, I had some personal story to share. Like I had a gym buddy, and he got COVID-19 2 weeks back, and one of my professor colleague from Mission College, he passed away 2.5 weeks back. So it's kind of personal to me, what's going on in Santa Clara Valley. So Virendra came back to me a couple of weeks back, and then we worked together on the first phase. So I'm going to continue that talk today and continue to talk about where we are at right now and what are the steps being taken for treatment, for diagnostics, for vaccine. Where are we at? And every piston is at full throttle right now. Government, healthcare, technology companies, pharmaceutical companies, as Virendra said. So it's kind of interesting time when we have all these different areas kind of coming together, trying to solve a problem. And this is something I've never experienced. I mean, most of us have not experienced in our lifetime, when we have a challenge of this proportion. And it's kind of uncanny. So go to the next slide. So right now we have 95 days since outbreak. We were talking with Virendra earlier. He was talking about last time when we met, it was 82 days. And now we are 95 days since outbreak, 1 million confirmed cases. I had done some preliminary study, in fact, early January, and I had me and few of my colleagues at work. We are kind of enthusiasts in data analytics, and we had projected that by March we will reach 1.1 million, and we are at right now. So that the path is accurate. What we had started with the Wuhan numbers, and we have reached 1.1 million. Like the Bill Gates said, it's a 33% per week, I believe he forecasted. Around the good news is there are 225,000 recovered cases, and unfortunately around 60,000 lost lives. And nowadays, yesterday there were 560 people died just in New York, and the day before was 900. So it's just unfortunate thing going on. I was a New York State resident for 9 years in my early part of my life, and it's kind of home for me. Yeah, go to the next slide, and you see here the biggest hotspot right now in the United States, with 243,000 cumulative cases and 5,900 deaths in last few weeks. So the left-hand side chart shows where it all started and where it all ended up, right? So we had China cases. So this particular chart is on a micro scale. They tracked few patients where they went and spread the virus. So this is no way comprehensive infection spread path, but you kind of see that Italy is a source for most of the European infection, and China is a source for Asian infections, as obviously, and then we have Iran, China to Iran, and then you have the United States here too, which has the Chinese influence of the virus. So, and if you see right now, the biggest chunk of infection since March 19 is from United States, followed by Spain and Italy and Japan. Yeah. Next slide. So if you see United States right now, we are at a very, very bad state. We have a 2-day to double. New York rate is 2 days to double. Other states we are seeing, California is 4 days to double. And like we have other hotspots. If you go to the next slide, it shows up all the hotspots. Next slide. Yeah, so you see the hotspots right now is Mississippi. We have Louisiana. We have Georgia and We have Colorado, unfortunate that is something that I just saw, and Utah, mainly the skiers got infected in Utah and Idaho. They are seeing a big chunk there. I just heard about this church in Sacramento. Around 83 patients there have COVID-19, and they don't want the county to bother them. They want to leave them alone because most of them are seniors. So it's kind of started from West Coast early in March, and now we are seeing New York, New Jersey are the hotspots on the East Coast, and we have Colorado on the Midwest, and in the peninsula there is the Panhandle. We have the Mississippi and Louisiana, and Ohio also. So these are some of the hotspots in the United States. And the curve, the way it looks like, it's like 2 to 3 days for doubling the number of infections. So right now we have advisory to wear the mask and not get out as much as possible in general. Yeah. Yeah, so if you see right now, the recovery rate in the United States is the worst among all. If you look at it from the data point of view, we are seeing that United States have most active infections right now, followed by Turkey and others. But the maximum hotspot right now is United States. It's 228,000 infections, followed by Italy, Spain, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and other countries. And the recovery rate is very, very low. Germany has the most recovery rate right now, followed by China. We have the number of deaths that have gone up in last day or two, last week, sorry. Next slide. So if you look at this, this one shows you the US trajectory as Virendra was talking about, the number of deaths and confirmed cases. We are on an exponential growth. So there's no way we are turning down or the curve is flattening in any way. We are marching ahead to the number that Dr. Fauci said, about 200 to 200,000 deaths. And around the way numbers are showing right now, we are looking at around 10 million infections in foreseeable future by the time we are done with it. So this is quite alarming. And there are only 70,000 or so ICU beds in the United States, all of United States. So we cannot afford to have that many people get sick because we don't have enough beds and ventilators and all the other supplies. The next slide. So this one shows there's a company called Tectonic. They started tracking mobile behavior, like mobility behavior based on your cell phone data. And all this data is now kind of available to Google. Companies like Google, they give you the app usage data that you can download. You can purchase it from Google, and from there people have kind of fingerprinted individual phones, and with a very high probability they are able to say that a given phone is in the given region. So they are able to see it here very clearly that Santa Clara County is getting a B for the social distancing score, a grade, and we are at C for decrease in average mobility. And we have an A in the greater than 70% decrease in non-essential visits. So we are kind of doing fairly okay, but there are other states they need to understand. You see there are states with the F, which is, I believe it's Idaho, and we have Mississippi. These two states got F because people don't care. They're going about their business. And the middle states, they don't even have the stay in place advisory. So a lot of my friends who are like doing hourly jobs, they have moved states. They moved to the Midwest to continue to work because here there's no work in California because all the stuff, restaurants have shut down. So there's a debate going on that why some states are not shutting down, right? So that is interesting. Go to the next slide. So this is the number of unemployment, number of unemployment claims filed yesterday, like last week. and this have reached like 3 million last year. Last week was 3.3 million, and this week is 6.648 million. Yeah. So this is the highest ever in the history of United States that we have so many unemployment claims in a week. Next slide. So now we get into the mitigation part that I want to talk about. In the mitigation part, as you can see, we are seeing around three tracks going on, right? So there is a diagnostic track. There are 41 regulatory authorized diagnostics tests. The one was shown by our president earlier this week, the ABOT test that gives result in 15 minutes. Then there are treatments. We talked about it last time when we met 2 weeks back on what kind of treatments from Regeneron and a few other companies, and there was a lot of controversy about chloroquine, and some people took chloroquine phosphate and they passed away. So there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of debate about the BCG vaccine and how that is impacting the cure, and if you have the BCG, then you have a good chance you won't be infected. And the dosage of BCG also is in focus these days. So in India, the BCG vaccine is much more stronger than what they give in US. So that is another reason why young people are not getting it. They're getting so easily because they are vaccinated by the BCG, because the regulation came in maybe sometime in 70s to vaccinate everybody with the BCG, all the newborns. So these are the three, there are 5 vaccines that are in the different stages of clinical trials. There have been a lot of failures in the vaccine clinical trials recently. And then there are around 23 clinical trials on the drugs to mitigate after you get infected, what you do, right? And the biggest promise is the HIV drugs, the multiviral response that is given to the HIV patients and some hepatitis patients also. And diagnostics, we talked about it. Next slide. So from the diagnostics perspective, we have 35 polymerase chain reactions on the diagnostic test. Then there's a point of care 3, then next generation sequencing is 2, and isothermal amplification is 1. And they have FDA has given emergency use authorization for 20, and 17 have the CE mark from Europe, and then labs developed test is 1. And there was a test in India by a very innovative company to do the coronavirus test, and I was reading about it, and it's quite promising how they were able to develop it at so low cost, and they are able to administer those tests today. It has gotten approval from most of the Indian authorities. So result time, there's 7 have less than 1 hour, others have 2 to 8 hours, 23 have 2 to 8 hours, and 11 have 12 hours or more. Next slide. So if you look at the treatment, there are some treatment of symptoms, anti-inflammatory, anti-inflammation, antiviral growth. That's a treatment goal and purpose of drug being developed. So yeah, last time we talked about like anti-inflammation. The Regeneron cytokine treatment was more based on anti-inflammation. So when a virus attacks and how badly it attacks you, like as if there was a very good analogy when I did my research that let's say you are sitting in a bus or a train or a plane, and you are sitting next to or behind or in front of a patient who is already infected. You have a big dose of that virus, right? Because for an extended amount of time. So your immune system is going to respond much more strongly if you are a healthy person. So at that time, probably what happens is your lungs become very weak, and at that time they want to hit with the anti-inflammatories like cytokine treatment and get you out of it. Like treat symptoms. There are 6. I'm sorry. Hello. Yeah, okay. So then there are some preclinicals, like 30 plus are preclinical. So you have the phase of development. We have one drug which is in phase 4 trial. So that should be, that's already being used for emergency use for the patients. There was some kind of comment made by a French politician that we should try these drugs on in African America, in Africa, in Western Africa, because of usual reasons. There was kind of very controversial comment they made because some of these drugs are in early stages and they want to see how they are affecting human being. So that's the treatment. And next slide. Vaccines, we have 41 currently in early development. Some of them have failed. The vaccine platform, there are some DNA-based vaccines, inactivated, live attenuated virus, non-replicatory virus, replicating viral vector, RNAs, virus-like particles. These are some of these vaccines. So there's a lot of antibody treatment. Again, Regeneron and Sanofi are part of these initial trials where they are taking the antibodies from already cured patients, and they are trying to see if those improve. Like with the plasma, they are injecting it into the patients to see if they are able to improve their prognosis. Also, these vaccines are, a lot of them are live attenuated viruses or replicating viral vectors. So they're talking about this. There was a news I read that like long time back when the smallpox was quite prevalent in the world in 1800s. They used to get cowpox vaccine. So like a lot of people who used to get cowpox were immune to smallpox. So they are trying to see there are some areas in eastern India, like Nagaland and other areas where the tribals, they still live in the caves and they are immune to coronavirus. They have done some studies on that, and they are saying that if we can take the antibodies from their body, because they have been immune to any type of coronavirus for a very long time. So they're trying to see if they can take their antibodies from their body or the animals who live around them, and see. They have seen some benefit and improvement in that also. So some of these vaccines are based on that. Next slide. So these are the diagnostics. The biggest is our president showed it to us earlier this week, was Abbott. It shows results in less than 1 hour. Then Avellino is another one, which is PCR based. And then you have the BGI, then you have the CDC has 24 to 72 hours. That's more like Petri dish. They try to culture the virus in Petri dish. Then you have Cepheid. There are quite a few companies, the top 20 here, and they show results time. They are able to develop vaccines with less than an hour or an hour long prognosis. And now they are saying that they are taking these tests and sending it to Pacific Northwest, other part of United States, where the treatment is not available that clearly. So there was a use case yesterday I read that a lot of these Native Americans, American Indian communities in Arizona is getting hit very fast, and some of these communities will be wiped out if they don't do anything about it. So these are like remote communities who live inside the Grand Canyon area. So it's quite alarming to hear that. Next slide. So these are the treatments. The top ones are from China. So it cannot be, so there's some question about that, but they have shown good results, but they have failed trial. The antiviral growth treatments, the phase 4, this Hep C, as I said earlier, hepatitis C from Aceltis from China, they are showing very good response. They are used to treat with pneumonia. So they are in phase 4 trial. They are Hep C and HIV protease inhibitors. Then we have other ones from the United States. These are from Roche. So our president talked about it yesterday, and Dr. Briggs talked about it, about the IL-6 inhibitors, anti-inflammatory. Then we have other oncoimmune IL-6 inhibitors, more oncology type of. Then we have other Canadian research on the tubulin disruption, anti-inflammatory. So you see there's a combination of pneumonia treatment and anti-inflammatory. They are given at different times of how bad the infection is and different times of the treatment. So these are all after the fact. So you're already infected, what do you do, right? After you're infected. So that's the treatment. And the next slide. And this is the vaccines. There are 41 vaccines, as I said earlier, and different types of vaccine. The biggest is the United States, the Moderna. Moderna has the RNA treatment. It's in phase 1 trial. First patient dosed already, and we'll see how it goes. Then there is non-replicating viral vector phase 1. This is from CanSino Bio, I believe. This is from another company in China, I believe. Then you have the University of Oxford, phase 1/2. Then we have the Shenzhen Genoimmune Medical Institute, is lentiviral, and then we have other ones for the BCG vaccine, as I was earlier saying, a lot of promise in Netherlands and in India. A lot of doctors are testing the BCG vaccine, and these are live attenuated virus LAVs. It's in phase 3, phase 2 trial, and then another BCG vaccine from the Australian Murdoch Children's Hospital. So those are the promising trials that are going on right now for the vaccine, and but there is no silver bullet. All these are just still trials. They are doing it on different type of animals and mammals to see if it works. So this is where we are at. Next slide. So this is my dear topic. So there's a Summit machine that's from IBM supercomputer. It's world's fastest supercomputer today. And Oak Ridge Lab, Professor Smith, Dr. Smith from Oak Ridge Lab, created a model of coronavirus spike based on research published in January. And this was done in January, right? But it's showing promising result, and some of the treatment that you saw is from this. They've used the components from this research. So it can do more calculations per second than the world's population could do in a year. And they found 77 compounds. The Summit computer found 77 compounds for most effective treatment, right? So that's the IBM's Summit computer. But go next slide. But Summit is just a tip of the iceberg. Aurora is the Intel's $500 million machine. It's under installation. It will be up and running by 2021, which is, they call it exaflop machines, which is going to be at least 20 times faster than the IBM Summit machine. So basically the project was able to identify 77 candidate molecules that other researchers can now test in trials. This is an interesting development. Next slide. Yeah, so that's it. That's it I had from me. I just wanted to cover some of the numbers and where we are at right now, and what are we doing to solve the problem, the puzzle that we have right now. And we hope that this is worst, and we are not going to get worse when we meet maybe 2 weeks from today. You know, we hope that these numbers are not, you know, the way the rate is 10 times. That is the expectation, that numbers will be 10 times today if the numbers we don't, if the infections don't confirm. Yeah, so I wanted to just share my work that I'm doing today. I'm giving out free these sanitizers if you're in the Bay Area. I went to this place, Lab Pro in Sunnyvale. I got all these ingredients. This is a WHO certified process to make sanitizers. So if you want to do it yourself, because all sanitizers are out of stock, and it's recommended that you use it all the time, you're outside your house. And yeah, so this is how you make it. It works. I mean, I have made a lot of bottles like this and distributed to many different healthcare facilities, nursing homes, and other places. So you're most welcome to try and help others as much as you can. Thank you.
Where do I start? I have to start with impeccable research, Bhairav.
Yeah, thank you.
Impeccable presentation and all the insights. I have a couple of questions for you, and you can pick it up on any of your favorite area, because I know your basic research and basic specialty is on the data science and AI ML side.
Yes.
Vaccine trials, diagnostics, or any side where these things are getting leverage. Take that example and walk us through how this is being churned. That is what we will be interested in to hear from an expert, definitely today.
Yeah, so your question is that how all of these things come together, and how we can make a effective treatment through this, right? That's what your question is?
Absolutely,
Okay.
that's the question.
Yeah, so what I've been reading and watching these days is essentially the testing is essential, right? So that's what the country like United States that have unlimited resources from the financial perspective. So what they are trying to do in last week and a half or 2 weeks, I would say, is to get all those tests up and running. So they have the test running now. I believe they're talking about 10 million test kits are already out, and they're going to make another 10 million. So now that they have more test kits out, people are getting diagnosed. So there was a nursing home right maybe 5 blocks from my house. They had 23 cases, in nursing home. So I mean, they are testing them, and now this test kit can be put in a doctor's office and can be used. That was a big deal, right? That they are able to push it out, and now they are not silent people like running around infecting other people. So that is the first part from the testing diagnostic perspective. So now that, let's say you got tested and you have COVID-19, now what do you do after that, right? So now all these people who are getting tested, they are getting quarantined, right? And then they are self-quarantined, or they are put in a quarantine like Mr. Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo's brother. He is in trouble these days. So that's one part, right? But then what if they are sick and there's not enough beds, and they are trying to convert hotels and convention centers into hospitals, and even the ships that are out there in the West and East Coast, they are trying to convert them into hospitals. So now that you admit them, and now they are not responding to treatment, right? So that's why you see the recovery rates are so low in the United States versus in Germany and in Australia and other countries. The recovery rate is very high. Why is that? It's because of the treatment itself, how they are being treated, and the ventilator availability, and in general the facility itself. Because the infections are happening more in poor areas where they don't have enough facility. In fact, the early responders, they are not able to go to the patients because they themselves are infected. So when they are trying to give these treatments like the chloroquine, they are also trying to give other medicine, like I showed you, the hepatitis C. So there was a very good study in Rajasthan, in Jaipur, I believe. There were few patients they had in their hospital, and they gave them the HIV treatment, and also the malaria drugs, right? And they are able to, they recovered in less than a week with that treatment they gave. And the doctors gave an interview last week, and they were talking about it, that how they were able to treat that 3 patients who were suffering from COVID-19, and they were quite sick. So that they are trying all these different drugs, not in the United States, because here, unless they diagnose it, they are not going to give you the drug, right? But in India, they are trying all different creative treatments to try to treat the patients, and they are seeing mixed success in that. That's why you see the number of recovered in India is much higher than here in the United States. So, so that's the treatment. And from the vaccine perspective, we are still far away. We are not even close right now from the BCG news. I hear that's quite promising. That, and you saw that some of these BCG vaccines are in the late trials right now. I mean, stage 3 and all. So I do see that promise in BCG vaccine. That they are able to. Those are viral drugs, right? They have active viruses. They inject into the body and try to see if that improves, and they're seeing that effect working very well. So that's all I have from these 3 stages, how they are able to treat the patients and getting them out of after recovery, or they're treating them. But the vaccine will be the deterrent, So there is this news I read that Germany started giving antibody counts. So they are giving a certificate, antibody certificate, to the patients who are recovering, or and based on that certificate, you can qualify to get out and do whatever you need to do, right? So there's a lot of talks about that hey, can we count the antibodies and give a certificate type of thing for people who want to go out and start working, or when they start releasing the this quarantine that they have, the mandatory stay in place. So that's going to be interesting to see how that antibody certificate activity goes on and how they're able to distribute it in a real time. So that's something I see that is interesting to see, that how they are able to measure the antibody count and how that can be improved with the vaccine. Yeah.
So one last question, Bhairav, and that is very simple. From the past outbreaks of HIV or Ebola or SARS versus this one, this has been the nasty one, real nasty. And of course, when it comes to the technology to assist in whatever fashion, we are ahead in the curve in technology also. So how do you compare the 2 curves? How are they helping or not helping in spite of this being a very nasty outbreak? And how the data science, deep learning AI is pitching in with the quantum as the kind of a future aspect as well. So just throw your thoughts on that, and that should be.
Okay. Yeah. So so based on there are 3 parts of it, right? So first part is the SARS and Ebola. Ebola was, and MERS was another one. So so Ebola was more, you have to be with that patient and their bodily fluids would infect you, right? So it was more focused in Africa and in Western Africa, mainly the part of Liberia and Nigeria and that part of the Western Africa, Ghana and other places. So it did not get out that fast because it was more focused in that area because it was taking a while to get infected. But then it comes SARS. SARS was nasty too. And it came out of Beijing and then it went into the world. But that infection lasted it was 80,000. So I think more what I was reading about was that it's more about when SARS started, So SARS did not coincide with the same timeline as coronavirus and the COVID-19. The COVID-19 was around since November, December time, and then it got peak in China in January, and then it spread the rest of the world after that. I was showing you that chart earlier in the second slide, was showing that, okay, in February, the China cases went up and then it went down and then we thought that it's out, but then it picked up in Italy, like February, end of February, and then you see what happened. since then. So the biggest problem with this virus is it stays in the environment for a long time. It can be passed through the bodily fluid, through touching, and if like it stays on the cardboard boxes, it stays. So that's why you see a lot of grocery store employees are getting this virus, and so as the Amazon warehouse employees and others like UPS employees, because these viruses are staying on the top of the boxes, on the surface alive for a while. So that is the biggest problem, and that the gestation period of 14 days, like I was showing you last time, the SARS had a 4 days gestation, 4 to 5 days, and the flu is 1 or 3 days, 1 to 3 days. So this one is 14 days, and many times there are these super spreaders, right? The Sacramento church I was talking about, there was this another super spreader. I was reading about that in India. He was a super spreader, and he has infected like almost 1,000 people over a week's time, where he went to several weddings and several different functions, and he infected so many people. So that is the problem right now. So unknowingly you are infecting others who are more vulnerable, and that is creating more trouble.
That's true, very true.
Because 80% of cases are mild infections. So me and you, we may have it, but we are just healthy immune system. So we may have some symptoms, but then it will go away in a few days, and then we are back. But we have infected other people who are vulnerable around you. So
very true.
Yeah, especially I wouldn't advise you to go to Walmart or like those grocery stores. It's just very scary scene there right now.
No wonder, coming to my practical, I was just mentioning, I said a haircut or a shaving cream, shipping is $12 just on that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Lighter side, but avoid that. You can have beard now. That's the fad.
You'll be lucky if you even after paying that kind of money, you're gonna get your shipment.
Exactly. That's very true. Very rightly said.
All right.
Thank you so much, Bhairav. That was very insightful. Thanks for your time and all the efforts in this research. This has been very.
Thank you, Virendra. Appreciate everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Balaji.
Yeah. So I want to just go back to what Suraj said in the beginning. This is a group. We have been all together. We are all trying to learn from each other, impart insight with each other. And all these opinions here are our own. They are not representing any of our companies. We have our affiliation on our day jobs. This is all outside of our day jobs. And we are learning few things, we are sharing. So that's the share group, the meetup, that's the intent. And as I said, we have a real long flight today. And with that, going to our next panel expert, Vinay has been patient and waiting from India, joining early in the morning, and he's going to take us through the next types of quantum sensors, different styles, how they are getting fitted into this place, and we are still hooked on to our original topic of the day, quantum sensors. And without further ado, over to you, Vinay.
Thanks, Virendra. So when the topic was discussed about quantum sensors, then I thought this is a very important aspect which needs to be covered. So the entire need and what exactly do quantum sensors represent, and what can you expect and what can you not expect. So first of all, we need to understand what is the exact need of using quantum sensors. You can also use some sort of physical sensors to measure a quantity. So for instance, if you want to measure the room temperature, or if you want to measure the time taken in between two different actions, or if you want to measure some other basic quantities, you have some different tools to measure it, and you also have some quantum tools. So why do you need quantum sensors in this aspect? So the very first answer to this question is that quantum sensors allow you to standardize the measurement process. So for example, if you have to define what exactly is meant by a second, so then what you can do is you can define it in terms of some other physical quantities like a swinging pendulum, and one cycle of a pendulum of fixed length is called 1 second. Or you can also give in some different definitions. But in the case of quantum sensors, you have some physical constants in the case of quantum mechanics. So first of all, whenever you fix the temperature and the momentum of any particular particle, like if you get it to a lower temperature state and if you cool it down, then it behaves exactly as you want, and that behavior never changes. So for example, the number of oscillations in between a cesium atom at a very low temperature is always constant at that particular temperature. So in this way, we somehow use the constants of nature in order to have better standardization in our measurement process. Because the problem where you have a second defined by a pendulum is that, first of all, the Earth's gravitational pull is not the same everywhere. Then the length of the pendulum also contracts and expands in correlation to the temperature outside. And there are a lot of different aspects where the physical definition of a quantity changes. And in the olden times, this was fine because we didn't have very time critical, length critical applications. But for now, we have applications which require you to be precise at the femtosecond level. And this sort of accuracy can only be achieved by using some sort of quantum sensors. So with that, we come to the first topic, which is what are the basic types of quantum sensors? So according to me, there are three main types of quantum sensors, or three main applications of quantum sensors. So the first one is timekeeping sensors. So whenever you want any periodic motion, so it may be oscillation or timekeeping or generating pulses, then all those sorts of things are considered as timekeeping sensors. The second part is atomic interferometers. So now this is a special type of quantum sensor which responds to external stimulus. So consider applications like radar or even UV photo spectrometers, or a lot of different applications where external radio waves, UV light, visible light somehow affects that particular experiment. Then we have the last type of quantum sensors, which are based on quantum entanglement, and they are mainly used for environmental interaction. So now in the next few slides, let's get into details of what exactly are these quantum sensors and how can we build any sort of quantum sensor with a combination of all of these sensors. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the very first sensor, or the very first type of sensor, is a timekeeping sensor. And now over here, we have an example of a cesium atomic clock where the vibrations of the cesium atom, or the electrons which are orbiting the nucleus, so the number of times this orbit is completed is actually calculated. And then based on this calculation, we have the definition of 1 second. So over here, this becomes very easy to control, because if you control the momentum and the temperature of a cesium atom, then you can very conclusively determine the exact pulsating frequency of that particular atom. And once you get it to a predefined set of values, so a predefined set of temperature and momentum, that is when a fixed number of oscillations will give you the time equivalent of 1 second. And this is an excellent way of defining 1 second, because this 1 second is based on the fundamental unit of oscillation of cesium atom. And this is something which is never going to change. Even if you leave Earth, you are on some other planetary system, or you are in vacuum, or you are in a high pressure environment, everywhere this atom vibrates at the very same frequency given these same conditions. So this sort of standardization is very important in order to get the accuracy which we want. Next slide, please. So after this, we have a very important quantum sensor, which is called atom thermometers. So again, how do you define 1 degree Celsius, or how do you define 1 degree Fahrenheit? If you define any one temperature unit, then you can interconvert them to get other temperature units. But how do you define 1 degree Celsius? Well, you can think of it as the energy required by, or basically the temperature or the change in the energy state of 1 liter of water by providing it with a certain amount of heat for a certain amount of time. Okay, so this is a way in which 1 degree Celsius was defined. But there are a lot of different factors over here as well. So for example, the heat absorption capacity of water, it differs from place to place. The exact amount of heat delivered to that system differs from place to place. So essentially, with considering all of these things together, a physical representation of any sort of quantity is only valid until we are not concerned about the accuracy. So now, by looking at atoms as thermometers, then essentially, if you know the noble gas equation where PV is equal to nRT, and this is basically an equation between pressure and volume, and on the other side we have the number of atoms and the temperature. So essentially, the entire idea over here is that if you fix the pressure and the volume of any given substance, then you can also fix the temperature. So this is how it is defined, that if you, for a fixed volume, if you change the pressure of an atom from 1 Pascal to a certain amount after 1 Pascal, then the corresponding change is equivalent to 1 degree Celsius. So this is how, again, we have defined another quantity with a fundamental basic, which is never going to change, which is the universal gas law. And so with that, the pressure, volume and temperature correlation of any given atom is always constant. So again, we have defined over here an atomic thermometer. You can read more about this atomic thermometer in the resources. But for now, the only thing which we need to be thinking about is by using atomic thermometers, we again have standardized the process of defining the SI unit of temperature. And we also have standardized the process of measuring the rise in temperature with a certain degree of accuracy. Next slide, please.
Before I let you go to the next slide, I have a question here because this is very relevant with your temperature measurement. We are seeing in some of the countries, for example, I've seen some videos from India as well. People are taking the temperature and someone is taking these temperatures right at the railway station when people are boarding the train or alighting the train to see if there is any body temperature change as one of the measurements. Going back to Suraj, he was discussing entanglement, and you also mentioned entanglement based sensors. Again, that could be breaking away from the social distancing. Is that something valid thought process, hypothetically speaking? If you could implement
If
it
you
in such
look
a
at
way.
it in, yeah.
Go ahead.
So if you look at it in this way, if I pick up my phone and if I call you and if you receive the phone call and if we talk, is this a violation of social distancing? If this is not, then in the same way, using a laser temperature meter and just pointing it at your head. So essentially the ideal process is where it is not touching any person's head. So I don't know if that is followed with that same degree of care, but essentially you need to stay at a fixed distance from someone, and then
Right.
you point that measurement device, and then you get a reading. So essentially, if a phone call is valid in social distancing, then even temperature measurement by using lasers is valid. The same thing.
And no, I was going there with the entanglement and change of state at one end versus the other end. If we could implement something to measure a temperature as we were discussing earlier. Let's move on. And if you're not speaking, kindly put yourself on mute, please. Go ahead, Vinay, please.
Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so another very important aspect is atomic interferometers. And with this, we have further standardized a lot of different measurement processes where we define the certain interactions between external stimulus and an atomic system. So for example, how does a particular atomic system interact with UV visible light, or how does a certain atomic system interact with visible light? So an excellent example of atomic interferometers is X-ray systems. And with that, you can get a diagram of your entire body, an X-ray image of your body with a fair degree of accuracy. And again, this is because there are a lot of atomic interferometers working over there. So essentially, in an atomic interferometer system, there is something which pulses a signal, and there is some other thing which absorbs that signal. So by a combination of these two circuits and everything that happens in between, we can create an interferometer system. So I'll give a good example of atomic interferometer system towards the end, and that will further clarify this notion. So for now, next slide. Yeah, next slide. This is a repeat. Okay, so another very important aspect is atomic entanglement. And actually, this is something where quantum sensors start diverging from classical sensors or physical sensors. So in the case of atomic entanglement, in order to measure a certain state, you need to have two different particles which are entangled together. So for example, if you have two different atoms which are entangled together, and now you take them and you split them across two different corners of the planet Earth, or two different sides of planet Earth, and now you want to measure some quantities. So over here, if you make a change on one side, then that change is instantly propagated on the other side. So as Virendra rightly said, if I wear one socks and then immediately I have a socks on my other feet. But now this is very important, because if for some reason you wear one sock and on the other feet you did not get the sock which was expected. So over here, what is the exact reason? So first of all, there is some change in the position of your feet, because when we are looking at quantum sensors or quantum entanglement in quantum sensors, that is when it is very clear that if a change is done with one entangled particle, then it will immediately propagate to the other one. And if that is not happening, then there is some sort of interference in between. And the exact amount by which this entanglement is derailed from the exact timing where it is propagated instantly. So based on that calculation, we can determine that there is some problem or there is some interference in the system. So essentially, atomic entanglement essentially means that you can have two different particles which are oscillating at the exact same rate. And then by monitoring these two particles together, you can make sense of what exactly is happening in the place in between them. So good applications of atomic entanglement related sensors include the James Webb Space Telescope, even Hubble, and many more telescopes which look in the UV visible range. So with that, that is pretty much it for atomic entanglement. So now let's look at a very complicated quantum sensor system which we use in our everyday life. So this system, first of all, consists of a quantum timing device which generates a pulse, and then this pulse is further given to an IR transmitter. So now this IR transmitter pulses away IR light, and then on the other side there is a quantum interferometer which absorbs this IR light and then makes sense of what you are trying to talk. So this particular entire system of using various quantum sensors together can be collectively called as a TV remote. I'm sure everyone has used a quantum sensor in some point in their lives, because you have always used a TV remote. So essentially, if you look at a TV remote and if you switch on your phone's camera, and if you look at the top part of it, you can see a small light. And if you look at this light from the naked eye and you press a button, then essentially you cannot see anything. But if you look at it from a phone's camera, you will see a red light. And this pulsating red light is essentially what is a quantum timing device coupled with a IR transmitter. And then on the other side, this is exactly what your TV sees. And by looking at this particular infrared light, then it can make sense of what type of key you are pressing. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my talk, because I wanted to give a general level idea of what quantum sensors are and why do we need to be even considering quantum sensors over some classical sensors or classical measurement tools. Yeah, over to you, Virendra. Thanks.
Hey, Vinay, thank you so much for this generic introduction, but I do have a question for you if you want to take a stab at that. In
Sure.
terms of these sensors and hypothetically speaking, in terms of quantum sensors, we have been talking today on this forum, quantum sensors and their applicability and possible applicability in future for more of drug side or basically health side applications. So from that angle, do you want to pick up any of your example and give us an insight into how that gets mapped into the situation here? And especially if imagination could run wild and if we had to go and look for something hypothetically speaking in terms of the theoretical concept, how it could be leveraged to make use of that to get into any mitigation plan or any of the resolutions which are being worked today. You want to take a stab at that? Absolutely open question, very open questions, and definitely it will be open for other panelists as well.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, before answering your question, what I guess we need to do is first of all understand the process where you find a drug after you have seen a virus.
Right.
Okay. So first of all, after you have seen a new virus, then the first thing which you do is try to get samples of this virus and analyze its entire DNA structure. So based on this DNA structure, you make an RNA model. So this is first step of getting to know the virus. So after you have known the virus, now the next step is you start simulating this virus. So you take real animal tissues, human tissues, and you inject this virus. And then you see if the virus is incubating in exactly which environment and what conditions are making the incubation very fast.
Can you
Okay.
please put yourself on mute?
Okay, so essentially, with this, the step of incubation can be done on a physical device or a computer where you can simulate it. But essentially, over here, you come up with some conclusions where you give general level advice to the public. So, for example, regarding COVID-19 or coronavirus, it will not propagate very well in high temperature environments. So this is an analysis which was generated at this particular phase. After this, you start playing with the DNA structure. And by playing with the DNA structure, there is always one particular strand where if you try to modify the contents of this particular strand, the DNA system entirely collapses. And the task of finding this one particular strand is very important. And after we have found this one particular strand, then creating a drug which can exactly affect this one particular strand is also a challenge. Okay, so with this workflow set in our minds, let's look at how quantum sensors can actually help us in better accelerate this entire workflow. So first of all, in the case of incubation, if you want to analyze the exact rate of reproduction or the exact rate of growth of a particular virus, then with that you can use a quantum entangled system and get good comparisons between two different incubation environments. So for example, I have a quantum entangled system and I split it and I keep them in two different incubation environments. Then based on the change in between those two systems, I can exactly determine the difference in between the rate in which the virus is reproducing. Then for the second aspect, if I want to create a drug which can affect exactly one particular strand of DNA, in this we also use a lot of different quantum sensors, but a general level topic over here would be quantum delivery mechanism, where we create these nano robots using nanotechnology, or we create different drug discovery applications, and essentially we create a drug which can affect an exact cell and an exact DNA strand. And this sort of delivery of that particular drug molecule to that particular DNA is done by using various quantum sensors. So as Balaji said rightly, we have MRI and so many other quantum sensors are used in order to make sure that the drug is reaching the exact point. So in the case of drug discovery applications, it is very, very important to have quantum sensors, not because we have no other option, but because the accuracy which is offered by quantum sensors is the only very important aspect which is required to create a specific drug. Because if you completed this entire workflow and if you ultimately created a drug, and in the end, due to some errors in calculation or some small accuracy errors which started piling up, and essentially if you start targeting a different DNA strand which is closer to the one which you wanted, and with that, if the virus does not start collapsing and instead it starts getting different properties, and essentially you create a new mutation of that virus, then it would worsen up the situation. So this sort of accuracy is very important, and this sort of accuracy can only be delivered by quantum sensors.
Fantastic for running us through this complete process. I think that was very elaborate, very helpful. Thank you so very much. Let me see in terms of where we are headed next in this thing, but Vinay, this is one more slide you have here which you want to talk.
Yeah, so this is basically just an industry trend of quantum sensors, and it's something which you can look at, but not much to share because it's just facts.
Perfect. So it's basically the stats part of it. Okay. So I think these are the sources which Vinay has used, which will be part of your game plan. And as we come to the last part of the thing we have now heard today about clinical trials, we have heard about the bold actions, we are hearing about all the requests, all the companies, government, administration, everyone jumping in, and all-round impact of this beast, COVID-19. And of course, as we are talking here in terms of all the advisories which are coming out, even the latest on the mask side, and thanks to Bhairav also, who shared also about sanitizers, which are becoming difficult to available, but you can create it at home. Avoid gatherings, maintain distance. So from that angle, I know we are going ahead. This is our real call to actions. With that, let's come to our patient audience. And I want to really, really applaud and thank you. You have been very patiently listening. Absolutely, we want to open it for any questions for you. You can put it through the chat, or you can absolutely unmute your phone and ask for any particular panelist directly, or you can throw it at the full forum panel, whatever way. Absolutely open to you guys. Any questions? And before that, if any of the panelists want to comment anything more, that is also a possibility. Please go ahead. Otherwise, we can give it to audience for their questions.
So I just want to add one thing to Vinay's
Suraj,
presentation.
yes.
Yeah, this is Suraj, sorry. So rightfully said, Vinay, you touched upon a very, very good chord out there when we said that through the process of drug discovery, when you want to strike at the right DNA strand versus the other, and this is the main reason why drug development and discovery takes a lot of experimentation, and the available simulation mechanisms are not fast enough. So that's where one of the applications for quantum computational device would be more appropriate in terms of making that process faster. You touched upon a very rightful point out there. I just want to call it out. Yeah.
Thank you, Suraj. Really appreciate that. In fact, in our original plans, we did have some more detailed discovery and this piece, which we kind of changed a bit. But definitely we try to touch it today. Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Suraj. Any other comments, anyone?
Can you elaborate a little bit about what kind of chip we'll need for the quantum entanglement? I think this might be specific for the third speaker or third panelist.
Who's speaking, please? Can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, this is Yining.
Who's that, please?
This is Yining.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the question. And your question is directed to which of our panelists?
I think it probably is for the third panelist.
And that would be Vinay. Go ahead, Vinay.
Yep. Okay, so if I got your question correctly, it means what exactly do we need to do in order to create a quantum entangled system?
Right, particularly specifically for the chip.
Okay, so first of all, the workflow over here is not constant for each and every atom. So for example, you have a chip and you just say that I want a quantum entangled pair. This is not how it works. If you want a quantum entangled system, that is when first of all you have to keep a set of atoms together or a set of molecules together in a fixed environment. So this environment differs from the type of atom. So for every element in the periodic table, there is a certain temperature, a certain pressure, and certain environmental factors under which if you keep that particular particle for a certain amount of time, then it starts behaving as a quantum entangled system. And then you can start separating these two particles and keep them into either two different systems or consider them as one system. So essentially the answer to your question is that it is not straightforward and constant. It depends from what type of atom you are looking at. But in general, there is a fixed value for the pressure, temperature, time, and all of these constants. So if you provide this exact environment, then you can create an entangled system. But essentially the first requirement for creating an entangled system is that those two particles need to be very close to each other. And after that only you can separate them and take them to. So an excellent example of what are the possibilities with quantum entanglement is that you can separate these particles by thousands of light years, and still if you make one change over here, it is instantly propagated to the other particle, which is thousands of light years away from you. So no one knows how exactly this happens, but still the first requirement is that they should be together and in a particular environment where entanglement happens. So I hope that answered it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. That was perfectly complete answer. And Ali, this is like basically taking you back to Bob and Alice example, which you have seen in certain videos for entanglement. That is exactly what has been pushed out. But yeah, that's where it is. Any other questions, anyone? Any other comments from any of the audience? If we are good, then I think I believe we
I
have. Go ahead.
I had a quick question, Virendra. This is Adam Glickman. Are
Go ahead,
there companies in the Bay Area currently running and making quantum chips to do this that are small startups? I'm very interested. I'm very interested in the hardware.
Let me take that question.
Go ahead, Suraj. I was going for you only. Okay. You have the technologist on the panel. He has to answer you.
So yeah, so the definition of quantum chip, as Vinay rightfully pointed, it depends on what kind of particles you're using, right? And yes, we have a couple different companies that jump out within Bay Area, mostly in QCware, which is Canadian. They also have a Bay Area office. And Rigetti is pretty prominent. Rigetti is out here in Berkeley. And then you have a bunch of software ecosystem partners that are also supporting them. So yes, I mentioned big ones. There are many other companies in the stealth mode that are operating that do not want to yet come out. And of course you have Google, right? Which announced 5 months ago that they had achieved quantum, quote unquote, quantum supremacy. So yes, Bay Area is a hotspot right now. And also more research is going on in Europe, especially around France. So yeah.
And I have something up here which I can very quickly share if I still have it up. I hope I didn't kill it. Give me a second if I can. It's an Atos company, which is again from Europe, which I was looking at today. And they are also working in that area, plus doing a lot. So they are doing a lot of research. They are visualizing the stuff. So right now, as we all know, in terms of our stuff also, lot of funds, grants have been made available. It's to the tune of more than 300 billion about, which has been made available in the recent budget. So quantum is going to take really front stage, as very rightly said by Suraj, and we'll see. But yes, again, I go back to what Suraj kind of saddened me a bit that we may not see it in our lifetime, and I'm still interested to see something in my lifetime, in real world.
I mean, we may not see a general purpose quantum computer in our
totally agree,
lifetime.
I'm just thinking. So I think from that angle, that is the status there. Any other questions? Any other comments? I think we are coming almost to the top of our few minutes still to spare. Our actual target was 8 o'clock. We have few minutes. If you want to talk anything.
Bhairav, sorry to not to mention about Bhairav. Actually, we did some program with Zen for Quantum previously with Bhairav. He has presented a top quality AI training those days, and it was nice of him to join this.
Well, thank you, Balaji. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I said if that was piece not known to me, Balaji, absolutely thank you for bringing that up, because Bhairav has been instrumental in so many things, and he's been a very active, what do we call you, Bhairav? Researcher?
We call it, there are two names people give me. Like one is BBC, it's a broadcasting corporation, and, and the other one they call me the Maven. Yeah, so I connect.
I would definitely call you Maven there. If not that, but Maven cannot be compete without a BBC, right? So
there you go.
I mean, that's a simple thing there.
All right. Yeah, this is very common. People I know, they remember me like that, because I have information on my fingertip most of the time.
No, that's what exactly we saw. They say proof is in the pudding, and we have seen the pudding. So we can't absolutely question that at all. You showed us all the information on your fingertips. That was splendid today. With that, I want to thank all the panelists. Balaji setting this up in terms of the thought process and everything. As we came together, I want to thank each and every panelist. I came to you, I bugged you because I was putting this concept together and I wanted to make sure you guys bring out what you want to bring out and we get what we want to bring out as well. And I believe this was a very, very wonderful share by all of you to bring to our audience. And I'm sure it'll reach still many more people as we post this recording as well. And with that, I want to again confirm and affirm that you guys are okay. We'll be sending this recording out as well so as to share with more people. It has many good things and some things like Bhairav shared about sanitizer, overall stuff, the thought process, the way things are headed, where can you be safe, how should you be generally doing the stuff and everything. So from that piece, technology is never complete unless we look at all the impacts, unless we look at what is being caused, how is technology helping, how is economy doing, how are people doing, how's our health doing. Everything is all 360 degree, which we call in the quantum sense. And that's why I go back to my act 1. When I said quantum is about, some people say they understand, some say they don't understand, some say they do understand. And when we go for that piece that we understand or we do not understand is quantum. That's why when it comes to any quantum jokes or anything, but I say, guys, I am happy and I'm unhappy. That is the quantum state we always all live in. With that, guys, we'll turn the channel off. Good night. Thank you for attending today. We'll come back on this channel another time with another subject, and we'll continue to work together on that. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Adam. Hi, Yining. Yes. Oh, actually, I'm in the medical field as well. So if, well, I started with internal medicine and then, and I stay in the internal medicine, but then move on to the different subspecialty in internal medicine, started with hepatology, so liver, bowel, and then gastroenterology, and then urology, nephrology. But I expanded my primary field to IT, IT area and some other area. So that's what I was very interested in with quantum. Yeah, actually, I appreciate all three panels. They all